In the fall of 2021, in a quiet rural town in northern Minnesota, lived a 32-year-old man named Daniel Price. Daniel lived a modest life. He worked as a high school history teacher and, in his free time, loved photographing nature with his camera. His love for photography came from his father. Back in the 1980s, Daniel's father owned an old Soviet-made Zenit camera, taking black and white pictures of family gatherings, farms, and local events. Daniel had kept that camera as a memento, but in 2021, he finally bought a modern digital one. Behind Daniel's house stood an abandoned, half-collapsed home. As a child, he had heard strange rumors about it. Town gossip said it once belonged to a man named George Whitmore, whose entire family mysteriously vanished in 1989. Only his 7-year-old daughter, Emily, was found. But when rescuers discovered her, she wouldn't speak. She would just sit, frozen, staring at a wall. Since then, the house had stood empty. Locals said that on windy nights, the old windows would creak in a way that sounded like faint crying. People walking past would always quicken their pace. Daniel never believed in ghost stories. He saw himself as a rational man. But in November 2021, something happened that made him step inside that house for the first time in his life. One foggy morning, Daniel was out taking pictures of the fall scenery. The damp smell of wet leaves filled the air, and a low mist clung to the ground. After snapping several shots, he scrolled through his camera. That's when he noticed something strange in one photo, taken near the edge of town. The abandoned Whitmore house appeared in the background, and in one of its upper windows, a small figure stood. It was clearly a little girl, white dress, long hair, face shadowed. Daniel could swear the window had been empty when he took the shot. He tried to brush it off as an optical illusion, maybe the light catching dust particles just right. But curiosity started eating at him. What if someone's living there? He thought. Maybe a squad, maybe some runaway. Later that afternoon, Daniel walked to the old house. The front door was half open, its hinges rusted. As he stepped inside, a wave of musty air hit him, a mix of mold and something faintly metallic. The floor groaned with each step. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, and in one room, a cracked picture frame hung crooked. Then he entered what looked like a child's bedroom. In the corner sat a broken doll. By the window stood a small wooden desk. On it lay a dusty photo album. Daniel opened it. Inside were pictures from the 1980s, a smiling father, a mother, 2 kids. The little girl, Emily, appeared in every photo. She was beautiful, but her eyes seemed strangely serious for her age. On the last page, there was a single, faded photo of Emily standing alone in a dark room, her hands at her sides, staring directly into the camera. Underneath it, in shaky handwriting, March 13, 1989. After that, there were no more photos. Daniel placed the album back on the desk and started toward the door. Then he froze. From behind him came a very faint whisper. He couldn't make out the words, and the language didn't sound familiar. Slowly, he turned. The room was empty. Suddenly, his camera, still in his pocket, clicked on by itself, and took several photos in rapid succession. Daniel pulled it out. The screen was completely black, but from inside the camera came a faint click, 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 as if it were still taking pictures. Fighting the growing knot in his stomach, Daniel left the house immediately. Back home, he plugged in his camera to check the images. The last photo made his blood run cold. It was of the same child's bedroom, but this time, standing directly behind him, was a little girl in a white dress. Her eyes were completely black. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat in his small living room, the glow of his desk lamp casting long shadows on the walls. The camera sat on the table in front of him, like some strange artifact he didn't want to touch, but couldn't ignore. He kept opening the last photo. Every time, he hoped it would look different, maybe blurrier, maybe less real. But every single time, the details were the same. The girl's pale face, the black, bottomless eyes, and her proximity to him. She was close enough that if she'd taken one more step, she would have been touching his shoulder. Daniel told himself he'd go to the police in the morning. He could claim someone had broken into the house, maybe even show them the pictures. But deep down, He knew there was no logical explanation an officer would believe. At 2:17 a.m., the camera clicked. Daniel jerked upright. The camera was still on the table, the lens cap on, but the shutter had just gone off by itself. He picked it up. The screen flickered. Then a single image appeared. It was his living room exactly as it was right now, except he wasn't alone. Standing in the corner, where the light didn't quite reach, was the same little girl. Her head tilted slightly to one side, her hair hanging down over part of her face. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He put the camera down slowly, his hands trembling. Then, from the kitchen, he heard a faint tap. Tap, tap. Like bare feet stepping lightly on the tile. He grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and moved toward the sound. The kitchen was empty. The back door was locked, but when he shone the light across the floor, he saw small, wet footprints. They led from the door toward the living room, and then stopped, as if the person who made them had simply vanished. Daniel barely slept that night. He sat in a chair until dawn, watching the camera. At some point, exhaustion took over, but when he woke, the camera's memory card was full. Every single picture was of him sleeping. In some, the girl was standing in the doorway. In others, she was closer. The very last one was just her face, so close to the lens that her skin filled the frame. The blackness in her eyes seemed almost to swirl, as if pulling him in. Shaken, Daniel decided to dig into the Whitmore family's history. He went to the small local library, where the elderly librarian, Mrs. Carr, had lived in town for over 50 years. When he asked about the Whitmores, her expression changed immediately. "They didn't leave, Daniel," she said quietly. "They were taken." She explained that on the night of March 13, 1989, George Whitmore had called the sheriff's office in a panic, claiming his daughter Emily was not Emily anymore. By the time deputies arrived, the house was silent. They found no trace of the parents or the older son. Emily was discovered sitting on the floor of her bedroom, staring at the wall. Her eyes, according to one deputy's statement, were so dark they didn't catch the light. Emily was taken to a psychiatric facility. She never spoke a word again. She died 3 months later, cause unknown. Before she passed, a nurse swore she heard Emily whispering in the middle of the night. The words were unintelligible except for one sentence, repeated over and over. "Don't look at the pictures." It was ridiculous. She'd been dead for over 30 years. And yet, the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Every single thing that had happened to him had begun with a photo. The first picture of the house, the window, the girl, and then, she'd followed him. That evening, Daniel sat in his car outside the Whitmore house. The sun was gone, the sky a dull, steel gray. He told himself he was here for closure. To prove to himself there was nothing inside, he left the camera in the glove compartment. The house felt even colder than before. The air was heavy, almost wet, like he was breathing through a damp cloth. His flashlight beam trembled as he swept it across the walls. In the child's bedroom, everything was exactly as he'd left it. The broken doll, the desk, the photo album. He didn't touch it, but then he noticed something new. On the wall above the bed, carved into the peeling wallpaper, were dozens of small hash marks, like someone counting days. Some were deep and jagged, as if carved in a panic. He counted them. There were exactly 93. That number meant nothing to him, until he remembered Emily had died 93 days after being found. As Daniel stood frozen, he felt its warm breath against the side of his neck. A small, high-pitched voice, almost like a child trying to be quiet, said, "You shouldn't be here." Daniel spun around, the flashlight's beam slicing through the room. Empty. But when he turned back toward the door, the beam landed on something that made his stomach drop. His camera. It was sitting in the middle of the floor, lens pointed directly at him. Daniel backed toward the wall, shaking his head. "No," he whispered to himself. The camera clicked. The flash went off, blinding him for half a second. When his vision cleared, she was there, Emily. White dress, black eyes, standing less than 2 feet away. Later, no one knows how much later, Daniel's car was found still parked outside the Whitmore house. The driver's seat was empty. The camera sat on the passenger side, There was only one new photo on the memory card. It showed the interior of the Whitmore child's bedroom, lit by a dim, unnatural glow. In the center of the frame was Daniel, standing perfectly still, his face pale, completely black. In the corner, half hidden in the shadows, was the little girl in the white dress. She was smiling. If you zoom in on the very edge of the photo past the bed, just beyond the cracked door frame, you can see something else. More hash marks, freshly carved into the wall. There are only 2 of them so far.